Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Lucifer Season 6, Episode 5. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're picking up with the conversation between Chloe and our now named angel, Rory, Aurora, but aka Rory. But I'm like, oh, that's a really beautiful name, because Chloe's like, right. The reason why that resonates with me, because it's like, if I ever had another daughter, I was always going to name her Chloe, but I'd never told anyone that. It's like, wow, you really are mine. Like, because she did feel something too, but hearing that too, it's like, wow, you're my daughter. It's like, before, and even I was like bringing it up last episode. I was like, how is this possible? Time travel wasn't necessarily where I was going. Like, I would have thought it would have been like something, well, I mean, it still works in the lanes of something cosmic, but I thought it'd be like, I was like, when would they been able to have a child? Like, I was like, something must have happened in, like, you know, but it turns out, obviously, you know, there's the sit down. It's like she time traveled because Lucifer wasn't in her life. So she wanted to go to a time where he was, because she was so angry with him. She wanted to kill him. And that rage, she self-actualized, going to a point in time where she could find her dad. It's interesting that she would inadvertently, she would end up picking a time where she wasn't born yet. I thought that was fascinating, right? Rather than a time period where she's around, she ended up picking a, maybe on some level, there's like a little existential like crisis in that regard. I think it's so fascinating because, like, knowing that is Lucifer's daughter, it does add certain parallels to her situations. Like, he's going through his very existential crises, I should say, as like he's dealing, you know, went to therapy, dealing with everything. So it's just, you know, and even Linda says it later on. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of, it's similar to you too, and they're both like, they both look away and then cross their legs at the exact same time. It's like, yeah, I think that's so fascinating. How that plays out, though. But it is, but I knew it would be why Lucifer was so against it last episode. It's like, there's no way I'd have a daughter, and like, I would never abandon a child. But for her, it's like, you did. He's like, something must have happened. And she's like, I asked mom about it, but whatever it is, mom won't say anything about it. And I'm like, why wouldn't Chloe say anything about it? And it's like, whatever it is, it must be so crappy that she doesn't. So Lucifer's thinking, like, his immediate thought is like, right, if I'm not around, it has to be because I was murdered. It has to be, because there's no other means. I would never do to a child what was done to me. Like, so he's so adamant about it. But for Aurora, it's like, no, but you did. Like, you know, so like Lucifer's thought is like, right, get rid of the Azrael's blade. It's the only thing that's on this planet that can actually straight up kill him. Which Chloe's like, oh, no, wait. It'll get rid of my superhuman strength. It's like, yeah, Azrael's blade is what's activating Aminadab's necklace. Like, the moment this is gone, like, the necklace just goes back to just being appended. So, like, it won't, you know. But Chloe's like, no, maybe we find, you can immediately, like, oh, like, she's gotten too attached to this superpower, the strength, and so she doesn't want to let it go. So she's making excuses, let's keep the blade here. We can, you know, I'm a detective, so we can solve, you know, the mystery behind who killed Lucifer Morningstar. It's like, yeah, you're a great detective and everything, Chloe, but like, how do you solve a crime when there's no body, there's no witnesses, there's no nothing? And it's like, well, we technically do have a witness, and that's Aurora, finding out like what little she knows. And she doesn't know much, but she knows, like, it was like, what, August 4th or something on Van Nuys, her, like, they turned a corner and then Lucifer disappeared and never came back. That's all there is to it. But then it's kind of like, so they have 3 weeks until we get to that point. Because it's also the thing too of like, wait, if that's around the corner, that also means like, is Chloe already pregnant? Is she going to get pregnant in this moment in time? And then like Lucifer's like, oh, maybe it was this time and this time. And she's like, please don't do your sex math in front of me. Like, trying to figure out when it could have been. Because she might end up accidentally Marty McFlying herself out of existence. It's the thing of like, once again, you never want to know too much about the future. Number one, time travel rule, because you can end up endangering the timeline and like altering it, because knowing too much, like knowing you have a daughter, could potentially like put you in a situation where things could go sideways. Interesting timing, like in the DC stuff of like, oh yeah, future kids popping up you didn't know about. Like, there's the whole Oliver and Mia situation, and there's Barry, like him and Iris already knew about Nora, but getting introduced to, spoilers, Bart, you know, so like interesting timing all around in certain regards. But still, I mean, I guess even more recently, Legends of Tomorrow, because Spooner got to meet her mom, you know, after all this time and stuff. Like, so, I mean, that's kind of an inverse of that. That's a more happier ending in certain regards in comparison to this, where Aurora's kind of, you know, hates her dad, because it's like, why? I have no reason why you weren't in my life. But once again, it's like, you're assuming that it was because you were killed, but it's like, no, like if it was that would be a good enough reason. So if you were killed, like mom would tell me that just because it'd be a good enough reason. But like the fact that she didn't tell me, it must have been something so terrible, so shitty that she didn't want to tell me. Like, you know, so kind of making it seem like it's more on Lucifer, but like that's why he's so adamant in arguing, because just no way I could do that. So they go to Van Nuys, and even he's like, why would I ever come here? Also, like, the fact is I know not to come here now. We can kind of avoid all that, so like let's take a trip to Colombia and stuff like that, like, you know, vacationing, a whole bunch of illicit drugs. But then he notices a Dr. Kyle's like dentist office, and is like, what's this all about? So Lucifer is like, she looks familiar, and then initially he's thinking like, wait, could I know her from like some masked orgy? And then like Chloe's like, wait, what masked orgy? Because it's also like, because Lucifer's like, I feel like I know her, but maybe I don't remember her. It's like, maybe we did have sex. It's like, but like, even she's like, but you remember everyone you've ever had sex with to the minute details, so like, why would you remember her? And it's like, oh, the masked orgy. And he kind of points it out, and the receptionist is her husband. He's like, wait, you slept with my wife? It's like, to be fair, we had no idea how long ago that masked orgy was, but basically Lucifer inadvertently blew up home dude's life, because it turns out his wife is there, and he's like, oh, well, you should know I'm sleeping with so-and-so who also works in this office. And she's kind of like, you didn't even notice the chemistry between us. It's like, I've never met this dude before. It's like, because Chloe rationalizes by like, you said it was a mass orgy, how would you know it was her, dude? It's like, oh. And then he recognizes the commercial. It was, once again, Bones. What's up with the Bones reference? Are there people who worked on Bones, like squeezing in bone references? Like, once again, I guess it's just like, right, a fellow Fox show. It's like, there's plenty of shows that were airing at the time of, it's so fascinating they latched on to that one in particular. And it's just like, oh, does this commercial run through Bones? It's like, that's where he recognizes from, because he's seen these commercials before while he was watching Bones. I forgot that actually, I'm so stupid. I forgot, like, there were previous seasons where he was watching a whole bunch of Bones. I think there were points where you actually see Bones playing on the TV, if I remember correctly. I forgot. Like, that's not like a recent thing. Like, it's not just this season. It's like, but I feel like it's come up once about Bones. Maybe the earlier seasons reference it, but I feel like, was it like season 4 or 5? I had to be like season 4 or something that mentioned Bones. It was a little bit of an older season. I don't remember what it was, but I'm like, I definitely feel like I remember them referencing Bones before now. But I think it's so funny that like 2 episodes in the season they reference Bones. Nothing against it. Once again, it just kind of reminds me. Once again, I need to circle back to that show at some point in time. But regardless, I love that. But it's like, yep. That marriage got blown up, and the guy's like, well, fine. And he's like calling the dog, but the dog jumps into her arms. And it's like, oh, he got fired. He's about to get divorced. He doesn't even have the dog. He even says, I don't even have a home. It's like, Lucifer's like, well, you get half of this. He's like, I signed a prenup. It's like, oh boy. And he's like bawling his eyes out. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to kill you. And it's like, oh, so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because in an attempt to find a person who potentially will murder Lucifer, we ended up creating the person who will murder Lucifer. So like, but now Lucifer's trying to do everything he can to fix that, remedy that, by being like, okay, so here's money, here's some like a 40,000 bottle of alcohol, and the guy wants nothing to do with. He's like, what do you want me to do for you to stop wanting to kill me? It's like, I want my wife back, which we never got a resolution to that. There's always still like potential. I hope they circle back to that, because like when I think about it, it's like, yeah, we never resolved that angle to the whole episode, because because later on Lucifer checks for Azrael's blade but couldn't find it. Because I love that Lucifer was like, right, we don't know, like there's no guarantee that even if we get together that he won't cheat on her. Because I love it's like, right, you ruined my life. It's like, you know, he's like, no, he was saying my wife, she's the love of my life, and then Chloe's like, but you cheat on her. He's like, I know, but the fact is that Lucifer's like, yeah, who's to say he won't cheat again, that he won't go back to blaming me again? So, like, even if we work it out, like, who's to say weeks from now he won't backpedal and end up wanting to kill me again anyway? Once again, like, that was completely left unresolved. So that could potentially be something we see in the future, or it could just be like nah, that's just thrown to the wayside. I hope we come back to it. I really hope we do, just to kind of get Chloe and Lucifer potentially playing love matchmaker in that regard, or maybe, like, Lucifer gets Linda's help in that regard. That'd be interesting. But aside from that, he finds out that the blade is gone. Immediately, my brain is like, because Lucifer immediately goes to his daughter. I was like, he would never doubt Chloe, but I was like, nah, it wasn't Chloe. It wasn't Aurora. It had to be Chloe. Because he's like, only 3 people knew the password to this. And I was like, it has to be Chloe then. Because she has ample reason, motive to keep that blade here on Earth rather than sending it to heaven like he wanted to. I wonder, does Azrael even care? Like, she's never really brought it up the few times we've seen her, like, her blade and everything. She's never really brought it up. So I'm guessing she's like, it's fine. Do whatever you need to, bro. You want to keep it on Earth? That's fine. I guess, like, considering after the last battle, the battle of the angels and the war of the angels, like, war for the throne, like, I guess, like, it's just kind of like, well, you were keeping it, so, it's fine, whatever. I'm trusting in your hands, bro. I mean, you are the next god and everything, so you feel the need to keep hold on it. I'll respect that decision, so maybe that's what that is. But, I love, like, Maze and Eve are trying to decide their wedding and everything. I love it where it's just kind of like, okay, she's like, shouldn't we have spikes and a moat? And it's like, or spikes and a moat. It's like, no, we're going to have a spikeless, moatless wedding. It's like, we're going to save that for the honeymoon, which I'm like, yeah, Eve. Luckily for Maze, Eve's a bit of a weirdo. But it's like, oh, hey, Maze. Hey, Aunt Eve. And it's like, wait, Aunt Eve, yeah. Oh, long story short, I'm Lucifer and Chloe's daughter from the future. Yeah, it's like, wait, you said Aunt Eve. I'm just Maze. Even I called that. I was like, ooh. And it's like, what's that mean? Ignore me. I shouldn't even said anything. I was like, whoa. #1 time travel. I was like, no. And then immediately when Aminadel shows up later on, because at first, like, and I love that Maze is like, wow, you probably break up with me. And she's like, wait. And, you know, Eve's like, wait, you broke up? I broke up with you? It's like, no, like, we don't know what happens. It's like, right. But you do. Especially when Aminadel shows up and he's like, hey, he's like, wait, whoa, my niece. And he's like, yeah, she time traveled. It's like, who is this guy? He's like, wait, I'm Aminadel. It's like, oh, you're one of my uncles. It's like, yeah, I'm the Silver City's greatest warrior, yada, 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 so on and so forth. Oh, you're Lucifer's little big brother. Yeah, of course I know you. I'm like, it's like, crap. Aminadell's like, that must mean I die at some point in time for her not to know me. But still, it's like, I guess he'd be like, Lucifer and none of our other siblings ever bothered to tell her about me. Because I think for him, it's like, in his mind, it's probably like, that was probably a practical joke from Lucifer not to tell you anything about me. But then I love the fact is that Maze is kind of looking at her and it's like, you're torturing us. And it's like, yep. I was like, dude, you little troll. It's like, of course. It's like, Yukado, I learned for the best. I'm like, yeah, she's like, I'm just messing with you, Uncle A. I know about you. I was like, dude, her and her max level trolling, that's amazing. And it's interesting what that conversation tells Aminadel. He's like, it's like, right. Like, I'm happy and everything, but for him, it's like, the fact is that how long have you been here? She's like, a couple of days. And he's like, and I claim to be able to tell if something was happening because we'll circle back to the conversation you had with Ella earlier. But for him, it's like, I claimed that if something was going to happen on Earth, I would know. I didn't feel your presence. Like, an angel popping up on Earth, I should have, and you've been here a couple of days and I never knew. Like, because I guess that never registered in his mind. Like, I guess at the time he never thought about it. It was like, right, like, wait, there's an angel here on Earth I didn't know about. Like, he didn't think about it at the time, but in this moment, his conversation with Ella made him think about it in this moment. Like, right, I should have been able to feel that. Like, I'm the most powerful, like, I would know about that. Like, regardless of time travel or not, like, your presence, like, the presence of something celestial like that would be known. But because Ella came to him earlier, which I love the whole, like, Dan's like, so can we go hang out and stuff like that? I mean, to be fair, Dan's not working. He's a ghost, so he's got no one else to really talk to except for, like, the Celestials. So, of course, he's kind of lonely, which is like, hey, man, you don't need to have, like, book smarts, it's fine, but you need street smarts. You need to do this, do that, never take this particular car because the transmission never get fixed. But Aminadell's like, you need to leave me alone because now people are just going to think I'm crazy because I'm sitting here talking to myself. And, I love Ella comes to him about everything. She's like, right, I've had a missing... I thought she was going to mention the frog falling from the sky, which she does, but then it was like, what she started off with was like, my missing sock. I was like, what is that all about? And then she was like, plus, but there's been an uptick in missing socks. I was like, is that supposed to be a sign of the apocalypse? Like, maybe that's supposed to be like representative of like, yeah, there's little pocket dimensions, like things are like breaking in reality where they're just disappearing or something. Because she was like, there's a 7%... uptick of like missing socks. Apparently there's a river that turned blood red. I was like, oh, that seems super like, oh yeah, that seems more legit. And then plus the frogs, I was like, that adds more validity to like the whole apocalypse thing potentially coming. But a minute I was like, yeah, I would know. And she's like, why would you feel that? He was like, I mean, I would know because I read so much on the internet. She's like, right, of course. She's like, thanks for talking me off the ledge. But then he comes back to Ella later on, like, and then she's acting a little suspicious. I thought like she was gathering evidence, but she didn't want to say anything because she didn't know when Minadel was like being more about it. He's like, I shouldn't have been so dismissive. But now like she's making excuses. I'm like, that's not making any sense. Like, why would you back down? He's literally telling you that he kind of believes you now, and you're backing down, making excuses. I was like, what's that all about? And so when he's leaving, though, he does see the frog, and I don't know whether he picked up something celestial from it, because once again, it can see Dan. So I'm wondering, like, if there's, I mean, it is kind of like, I guess because it is something holy in the sense that it is potentially connected to the apocalypse, and so it has some, I guess, celestial frequency to it or something, because he noticed it. But I guess it's like, oh, despite her saying all that, she's keeping her from, okay. But then, like, we finally get to see, like, what she's working on. Ella's trying to figure it out. I was like, yo! I wondered, like, that was my biggest thing going to this season, too. Like, was Ella going to be would she eventually find out? Because she's the last one amongst the squad to know about the truth about Lucifer. Obviously, Dan found out about it during the first half of season 5, but I was wondering whether or not Ella was going to figure it out, or would they tell her. It seems like she's figuring it out because she has a picture of Lucifer being like the actual devil, and looking at a minute ago, she's like an angel. Now, part of me was wondering, is she going to start questioning whether or not they are actually like the cause of all of this? I mean, to be fair, they've been around for a while, but maybe she's going to start thinking like maybe something's a little off. Lucifer has kind of avoided the God conversation around her, like, oh, I'm about to begin. Like, he lets that drop in front of other people, but I think it's because she is someone that believes so wholeheartedly. He doesn't, and how important God is to her, he doesn't want to kind of, like, taint that by being like, I'm like, you know, because it's like, right, like, because it is the thing of, like, he has, like, he's always been very forefront about who he is, but there are certain situations where he's very reserved about that around Ella. I think just because of everything that's kind of going down, like she has been, but like she's investigating and figuring it out herself. Because it's going to be interesting, because out of anyone, Ella is the most like devout person that we're aware of. Like, we saw how Chloe turned to things when she found out the truth, how that kind of went sideways. I'm curious, is Ella going to do the same route? Because she's got that board, and then on the other board, it's like, what's up with Dan 2 theories? And I love the final one is like putting side effects question mark, but she has it marked down. I was like, did you have a bad cup of pudding or something like that you're like throwing that out there? But that's like so interesting. I'm like, Ella's figuring it out on her own. That's fascinating. I was like, that's really, really interesting. So, amongst all that, we also have Lucifer, Chloe, and Aurora in therapy together, and it's just like, oh, like, who are you? The only Linda Martin I know is a felon. It's like, don't let her get to you, doctor. Like, the fact of the matter is, she did this to Amenadel earlier. Apparently, she's a liar. The apple fell too far from the tree in that regard. I was like, that is fascinating. Lucifer never lies, but she does. That's interesting. And it's like, you know, but even Chloe's like, wait, am I the reason why you, it's like, no, you did the best that you could on your own. But she's like, but still, like, for you to be where you are, like, I mustn't, like, she's kind of, you know, questioning her future parenting styles and stuff like that. And I love Linda's chomping at the bit of this, because she's like, oh my God, this is literally something that's never been done before. No one has. She's like, this would be perfect for chapter 17. Lucifer's like, chapter 17? She's like, nothing, never mind, forget that. I'm like, I love it. That's your background story this season. I love it that you're writing this book, because once again, she's looking for that exciting next chapter, because it's like, right, for her, helping God has pretty much been the peak of her career. Helping out, you know, Lucifer and Chloe. I even love kind of reusing some therapy like advice she'd given Lucifer back then, kind of using that now to help Chloe. Last episode was really interesting, but I don't know, I'm so interested to see how this whole situation plays out with Linda's book. But nevertheless, that's pretty dope. But obviously the therapy session didn't go too well, because Lucifer's accusing her, and she's like, you think I would kill you? It's like, you literally showed up here to kill me. She's like, yeah, but I didn't. So first and foremost, you can understand why he feels that way. But obviously for Linda, she talks about, right, you're angry, Aurora, but like there must be something even deeper, that more vulnerable that you're feeling. And in Lucifer, you need to be a little bit more empathetic to what she's feeling. And that's actually something Maze actually brings up to him later on, of like, because he's like, right, when he realizes at the heart of all of this, it's like, right, I hurt her, like, but you know, for him, it's like, if I did, like, he just doesn't understand why he would do something, like, having been what he'd been through, like, what his father being absent, like, why would I ever do that to my own child? I would never do that to them, because I would want to be better and do better, do all the things my father did wrong, do them right. And even saying, like, the same thing, like, obviously, like, Maze knows about that, too, because it's like, right, you know, Lilith abandoned her, so it's like, he's like, I'd be better than them, both of them, and he's like, now I'm potentially I'm just like them, maybe even worse. But then he's asking, like, she's like, what, you want me to torture you so you can stop feeling? He's like, no, I want you to. She's like, wait, you want my advice? And he's like, yeah. It's like, you're so focused on what happened, you're not focusing, and this is what Linda was saying, focus on what she's feeling, how alone that she's felt then and now. It's like, the question you should be asking yourself, instead of what happened, it's what can I do to fix this? It's like, you have the opportunity to be there now. Like, whatever the past may be, you can try and make it up to her by being there for her now. So try and fix it present day, you know? So I thought that was such a fascinating thing. And like for Mace, you know, because there was also that look on Eve's face. Well, Eve was like, oh, maybe, you know, you're a great aunt. Maybe you'll be a great mother someday. And like Mace kind of popped up. Like, I mean, Lucifer would have never saw himself as a parent necessarily. What about Maze now? It's like, now it's like, right, she kind of has her mother, she has her family issues, particular mother issues, so it's like, right, has she ever thought about wanting kids, you know? It's like, and if she did, well, like, her and Lucifer would be in the same boat in that regard, or like, right, we're gonna both do better than our parents were not there. If we haven't bring a child into this world, of course we're gonna be better, do better, but it's like, does Maze even want kids? Eve apparently does, you know? So we'll see how that plays out. But the look on her face, it could have been one or the other in that, or it could have been a combination of two, just not really, she's probably not even really sure how she feels about it in general, so that's gonna be interesting to see how that progresses in their relationship. But other than that, Lucifer admits that, right, he's like, I handled that wrong, I could have handled that a lot better. But then Chloe kept being like, I'm sorry, this is my fault. The moment she was trying to make amends in the therapy session, I was like, because she's the one that took the blade, and she didn't realize that Aurora was going to catch all the heat for it. And so she pulls out the blade, and he's like, how did you know it? She's like, I lied, because I'm the one that took it. And it's like, she's like, I did it to protect you. He's like, did you? She's like, what are you talking about? It's like, well, if that blade's gone, you lose your superhuman strength and everything. She's like, no, it's not about that. It's about protecting you. It's like, he's like, you've been a little off ever since. Like, give me the blade. She's like, no. It's like, he's like, this blade, like, this power is corrupting you. And she's like, no, I can control it and stuff like that. But it's like, can you really? And it turns into a fight. It's like, yo. And obviously Lucifer doesn't want to hurt her. Even at one point when he pushes her away with his palm, he's almost like, I'm sorry. But she comes full throttle at him. And it's like, whoa. Even to the point she gets on top of him, he's like, I never saw this coming. Like, so you're the one that kills me. She pauses for it. She's like, what? No, I would never hurt you. And it's like, this current situation says otherwise. She's like, I'm sorry. He's like, it's okay. She's like, I'm sorry, Lucifer. I am losing control of this. I don't know. He's like, don't worry. The blade makes a lot of humans stab you. But she's like, no, I was like this before I even touched the blade. Like, she's like, it's not just a sword. It does play into what I thought it was. Like, it is like her compensating because she felt powerless because of what happened to Dan. She ends up talking to him about it because it doesn't just give her superhuman strength. It gives her a lot of the other benefits of being a celestial, so she can actually see Dan. Granted, she can't touch him because none of them can because he's intangible. But in that moment, like, they're talking about Trixie and everything, and, you know, they're laughing, you know. I was almost hoping that, and I don't know if this would make it easier, but I was almost hoping that maybe Chloe would be able to give Trixie it for a little bit so she can see Dan at least one more time. But that'd be a hard thing to do, you know. That'd be rough, you know. That would just complicate things more for Trixie. It's already bad enough, you know. It's like, yeah, she's handling it. I mean, obviously it's been hard, and it hasn't just been hard for Trixie. It's like, it's been hard for Chloe as well, because it's like she blamed herself for what happened to Dan, and it's like, you're amazing man, you are an amazing cop, you are an amazing father, and she just she's like, I blame myself, but at least I was there at the end. But for her, it was just kind of like, ever since he died, like, she just felt so powerless, because that's why she's held on to the strength, because it's like, right, now I never have to worry about losing someone like that, because all the people that are important to me in my life, I now have the strength to protect them. But it's like, that was beyond your control. Superhuman strength or not, you would have still not have been able to get there in time. But it's like, it makes her, it's like a safety net. Like, it's her, that's why she's coveting it so much, because it is filling that hole in her heart for everything that's going on. So it's not, I was wondering if it was like the Dan situation plus everything with Lucifer right now, but it's like, no, it's mainly the Dan thing of like feeling confident, like, yeah, she just felt powerless in that moment. Like, the person she cares about, father to her child, she couldn't do anything to save him. But he's like, regardless of anything, you don't need that pendant to be strong. Trixie is strong, but not because of me, but because of you. You've always been strong. She just kind of lost sight of that for a little bit. And then Dan disappears when she's looking away. I thought like, oh, did he finally go to heaven or something like that? I was like, please tell me. It's like, no, because Lucifer ended up returning the blade at that point in time, so she can't see him anymore because the pendant's lost its power. But she's like, Dan, like, if you're here, if you're still here, you can see me, you can hear me. Thank you. That's what I needed. And Dan's kind of smiling, like being able to help Chloe in some shape or form. So, I guess we don't have to worry about her going full-blown dark side Chloe, so glad that was kind of resolved too. But it's like, interesting. But that was a nice, beautiful moment. And I figured like whatever his guilt is, it would have to be associated with that. Like, I think it's, maybe it's guilt in the sense of not being able to, he wants to make sure everyone in his life, that his little girl, that Chloe, I think that his friends are all going to be okay. Like, I think that's where his guilt is. Like, right, I'm not there for them. Like, maybe his guilt is connected to Trixie specifically, that, because obviously he wasn't in his own personal hell. I mean, Lucifer made, who knows, like, maybe when he arrived, because we never found out what his personal hell was first before Lucifer, like, gave him the special treatment, but maybe Lucifer put that in place even before, like, Dan got his, like, but even before they could set Dan up in his hell, because I think he doesn't have any idea of what it is that he's most guilty about. But even then, like, we saw with Jimmy Barnes, it's like there are layers upon layers. So, you know, it started off with the cartoon thing, but it ended up being something much, it ended up being the surface level to something that was much deeper. So the same thing could apply in Dan's case. So, but I think it's going to be about Trixie, you know, not leaving her at such a young age and not knowing, you know, it's probably like, right, I made a lot of mistakes. Like, I haven't forgiven myself for that. I'm not the great father that I, you know, but he wants to probably make sure that Trixie's okay. I think once he finds out and knows that she's okay, that everyone around him in his life is okay, I think that's when he can finally move on and go to heaven. I think that's what he's feeling guilty about, but we'll ultimately have to wait and see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.